Marcus Chen sat in the back corner of the Advanced Strategic Combat Theory classroom, his weathered hands folded neatly on the crystalline desk surface. Around him, dozens of alien cadets chattered in their native tongues, creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and harmonic vibrations that would have overwhelmed most humans. But Marcus had grown accustomed to alien sounds during his 43 years of military service across 17 different star systems. The Galactic Military Academy on Kepler Station was the most prestigious institution in known space, accepting only the brightest tactical minds from across 237 species. Marcus was one of only 12 humans ever admitted, though none of his classmates knew why he was really here. Professor Zixathera, a towering Christine with 6 arms and a translucent blue exoskeleton, activated the holographic display at the center of the amphitheater. The three-dimensional battlefield materialized, showing a contested asteroid mining facility surrounded by debris fields and hostile ship formations. "Today, we analyze the Battle of Zarian Prime," Zixthara announced, her voice creating harmonious overtones. "A complete tactical disaster that resulted in the loss of 3 fleets and 12 million lives. Can anyone identify the critical errors that led to this catastrophe?" Tentacles, claws, and various appendages shot up across the classroom. Marcus remained motionless, his dark eyes studying the holographic battlefield, with an intensity that might have concerned his classmates if they had bothered to notice the quiet human in the corner. Krell 9. A hulking Vorthon with chitinous armor and mandibles that clicked when he spoke was the first to respond. The Federation commanders failed to establish proper reconnaissance before engaging. They walked into an obvious ambush. "Partially correct," Zixthara replied, rotating the display. "What else?" A graceful Etherian named Lysa floated slightly above her seat, her gaseous form shimmering with bioluminescent patterns. They divided their forces unnecessarily. 3 separate attack vectors allowed the enemy to defeat them piecemeal. Also accurate. Continue. For 20 minutes, the class dissected the battle, identifying tactical errors and proposing alternative strategies. Marcus listened to each analysis, noting the gaps in their understanding, the assumptions they made, the lessons they missed entirely. These were brilliant young minds, but they lacked something that only came with experience bleeding on actual battlefields. Zixthara seemed pleased with the discussion. "Excellent analysis, cadets. Now, let me pose a hypothetical question. You are the Federation Admiral in this scenario. You have 3 fleets, limited intelligence, and political pressure to end the siege quickly. How do you proceed?" The suggestions came rapidly. Direct assault, siege warfare, psychological operations. Each proposal had merit, but Marcus could see the flaws that would lead to disaster. His fingers twitched slightly, an old habit from years of commanding real battles where hesitation meant death. Near the front of the classroom, Thias-Ka, a serpentine naga with scales that shifted colors with her emotions, raised her elegant head. "We should consider the human approach to this problem. They have an interesting perspective on warfare." Several students turned to look at Marcus expectantly. He was, after all, the only human present. But Marcus simply met their gazes with his calm, dark eyes and remained silent. After a few seconds, the attention shifted away from him. "Humans do employ unique tactics," Zixthara agreed. "Their species has an unusual relationship with warfare. They seem to excel at turning disadvantages into advantages through unconventional thinking." Krell 9's mandibles clicked dismissively. "Human tactics are crude, but occasionally effective. They rely too heavily on aggression and improvisation instead of proper strategic planning." "Perhaps," Zixthara replied diplomatically, "though their military history suggests otherwise. The human victory at the siege of New Thermopylae was studied across the galaxy for its tactical brilliance." Marcus almost smiled at that. He remembered New Thermopylae well. He had been there, leading the desperate defense that held off a hegemony invasion force 50 times larger than the defending human fleet. The academic analysis of that battle never captured the terror, the split-second decisions made with incomplete information, or the weight of knowing that billions of lives depended on choices made in the heat of combat. Class continued for another hour, covering theoretical frameworks and mathematical models for fleet engagement. Marcus took careful notes in neat handwriting, contributing nothing to the discussions but absorbing everything. His classmates had begun to dismiss him as either shy or intellectually inferior. Some seemed to view him as a diversity admission, a token human included for political reasons rather than merit, if only they knew. After class, Marcus gathered his materials slowly, allowing the other students to file out first. He preferred to avoid the social interactions that came naturally to his more gregarious classmates. As he stood to leave, Thais-Ka approached him, her scales shifting to a curious golden hue. "Marcus, isn't it?" she asked, her voice carrying the slight lisp common to her species. "You never speak in class. Do you find the material challenging?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "I find it educational." "But you must have opinions about the tactics we discuss. Your species has such a unique military tradition." "Every species has something to contribute," Marcus replied diplomatically. "I prefer to listen and learn." Thais-Ka's scales shifted to a frustrated orange pattern. "But surely you could share insights from human military thinking? Professor Zix-Thara clearly respects your species' tactical abilities." Marcus shouldered his bag, a simple canvas affair that looked primitive compared to the high-tech carriers used by his classmates. "I'm just here to study, same as everyone else." "How curious," Thais-Ka murmured as Marcus walked away. The silent human. As he made his way through the Academy's corridors, Marcus reflected on his situation. Admiral Marcus Chen, retired commander of the 3rd Human Expeditionary Fleet, victor of 18 major engagements, architect of the defensive strategy that saved 3 human colonies during the Hegemony War. Now he was just another student, anonymous and overlooked. That was exactly how he wanted it. The Academy's central plaza bustled with activity as cadets from dozens of species mingled between classes. Marcus walked through the crowd like a ghost, unnoticed, despite being one of only a handful of humans on the entire station. He had perfected the art of invisibility during his military career, becoming someone who could blend into any environment. His quarters were Spartan compared to the elaborate accommodations preferred by many alien species. A simple bed, a desk, a few personal items, and walls lined with actual paper books in an age when most information was stored digitally. The books were his one indulgence, classic works on military strategy from across human history: Sun Tzu, Clausewitz, Guderian, Rommel, Patton, masters of the art of war whose insights transcended technology and species. Marcus sat at his desk and opened a secure communication channel on his personal terminal. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to Admiral Sarah Reyes, current commander of Human Defense Command. "Marcus, how's retirement treating you?" Reyes asked with a wry smile. "Like being a ghost at my own funeral," Marcus replied. "These kids are brilliant, but they've never seen real war. Everything is theoretical to them." "That's exactly why you're there. We need to understand how other species think about warfare, especially the newer Alliance members. Your reports have been invaluable." Marcus nodded. His official mission was simple: attend the Galactic Military Academy as a regular student and observe alien tactical thinking. Unofficially, he was gathering intelligence on potential future allies and enemies, studying their strengths and weaknesses, their blind spots and innovations. "Anything concerning to report?" Reyes asked. "They're good at analyzing historical battles, but they lack practical experience. Most of these species have been at peace for generations. They understand theory, but not the chaos of actual combat. That could be an advantage for us if tensions escalate. Marcus frowned. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. These are good kids, Sarah. They don't deserve to learn about war the hard way. After ending the call, Marcus returned to his studies. Tomorrow would bring another day of sitting silently while brilliant young minds dissected battles he had fought, strategies he had developed, victories he had won. He would remain the invisible human, underestimated and overlooked. But in the shadows of the academy, Marcus Chen was learning more than his classmates could imagine. He was studying not just their tactical thinking, but their personalities, their biases, their psychological tells, information that might prove crucial if humanity ever found itself at war with the galaxy again. The next morning brought advanced fleet tactics with Commander HFY, a veteran Saurian whose green scales bore the scars of actual combat. Unlike Professor Zix-Thara's theoretical approach, HFY preferred practical exercises that tested students under pressure. Today, we simulate the defense of a critical supply depot, HFY announced, his reptilian features sharp in the holographic light. You will work in teams of 4, commanding different fleet elements. The enemy force is numerically superior and technologically advanced. Marcus found himself assigned to a team with 3 other students he had barely spoken to. Theska, the curious Naga, Krell 9, the aggressive Vorthon, and Zephyr Prime, an artificial intelligence housed in a sleek humanoid shell. They represented 4 completely different approaches to warfare. I suggest we establish a command hierarchy, Krell 9 declared immediately, his mandibles clicking with authority. I have the most experience with fleet combat. Experience? Theska's scales shifted to an amused blue. We're all students here. My people have a proud warrior tradition, Krell 9 replied stiffly. I understand combat instinctively. Zephyr Prime's optical sensors flickered as the AI processed thousands of tactical scenarios. I can calculate optimal positioning and timing within 0.003 seconds. Logic should guide our strategy. Marcus said nothing, observing the team dynamics that would likely doom them before the exercise even began. Each of his teammates was trying to impose their own tactical philosophy without understanding their opponents or even their own capabilities. What about you, Marcus? Theska asked. Any thoughts on our approach? Marcus looked at the holographic battlefield, noting the terrain features, supply lines, and defensive positions available to them. What's our objective? Are we buying time for reinforcements, or do we need to hold indefinitely? Hold indefinitely, HFY called out from across the room. No reinforcements are coming. Then we need to think about this differently, Marcus said quietly. This isn't about winning a battle. It's about not losing a war. His teammates exchanged glances. Krell 9's mandibles clicked dismissively. Humans always overthink things. We have ships. We have weapons. We fight. Marcus almost smiled at that. How many alien commanders had made the same mistake when facing human forces? Assuming that simple aggression would overcome careful planning and unconventional thinking? The simulation began, and Marcus watched as teams across the classroom immediately moved to engage the enemy forces directly. It was exactly what he expected from inexperienced commanders, and exactly what would get them killed in a real battle. We should advance to meet them, Krell 9 urged. Take the initiative. Negative, Zephyr Prime replied. Defensive positions provide mathematical advantages. Both approaches have merit, Theska said diplomatically. Marcus, you've been quiet. What do you think? Marcus studied the enemy formation advancing toward their depot. Superior numbers, better technology, aggressive commanders eager for a quick victory. They had every advantage except one. They're overconfident, Marcus said simply. Meaning? Zephyr Prime asked. They expect us to fight like traditional military forces, either charge forward or dig in defensively. What if we do neither? Marcus began outlining a strategy that relied on misdirection, feints, and psychological warfare. Instead of protecting the depot directly, they would make the enemy think it was more heavily defended than it actually was, while simultaneously appearing weaker than they were. Confusion and uncertainty would become weapons. His teammates were skeptical at first, but as Marcus explained the psychological principles behind his approach, they began to understand. Krell 9 would lead a visible defensive force that appeared strong but would retreat at first contact, drawing the enemy into a trap. Zephyr Prime would coordinate precisely timed ambushes using hidden forces. This Ka would manage communications and misdirection, feeding false information to enemy sensors. The plan was complex, requiring perfect timing and coordination. Most importantly, it required the enemy to make assumptions about their intentions and capabilities. As the simulation unfolded, Marcus watched other teams suffer predictable defeats. Direct assaults were crushed by superior firepower. Static defenses were overwhelmed by concentrated attacks. Only one team managed to last more than an hour, and they were slowly being ground down by attrition. Marcus's team executed their plan with growing confidence. The enemy fell for their feints, overcommitted to attacking fake defensive positions, and found themselves scattered across the battlefield when the real ambushes struck. Confusion spread through enemy ranks as their technological advantages became meaningless in the chaos of asymmetric warfare. When the simulation ended, Marcus's team was the only one still standing. They had not only survived but actually managed to inflict significant casualties on the numerically superior enemy force. Commander Vex High approached their station, his scarred features showing genuine surprise. Interesting tactics. Highly unconventional. Where did you learn to think like that? Marcus met the Saurian's gaze calmly. Human military history. My species has had to overcome superior forces many times throughout our development. Indeed, Vex High replied thoughtfully. Perhaps there is more to human warfare than I realized. As the class ended and students filed out, Marcus noticed the changed dynamic. His teammates looked at him with new respect, and other students whispered among themselves about the quiet human who had engineered the only successful defense in the exercise. Marcus gathered his materials slowly, already planning how to fade back into invisibility. He had revealed more of his capabilities than intended, but the intelligence gathered about his classmates' tactical thinking had been valuable. "Marcus!" Thiska called as he headed for the door. "That was brilliant. Where did you really learn to think like that?" Marcus paused, considering his answer carefully. "Books," he said finally. "Human military history is full of examples of weaker forces defeating stronger ones through unconventional thinking. It wasn't entirely a lie, but it wasn't the complete truth either." Marcus had learned those tactics not just from books, but from commanding real fleets in desperate battles where failure meant the extinction of human colonies. He had refined them through years of warfare against enemies who thought they understood human capabilities. As he walked away, Marcus reflected on the day's events. His classmates were beginning to notice him, which complicated his mission, but also provided new opportunities for observation. He would need to be more careful about revealing his true capabilities while still gathering the intelligence that Human Defense Command needed. The game was becoming more complex, but Marcus Chen had been playing games of war and deception for most of his adult life. He would adapt, observe, and learn, all while maintaining the facade of a simple student lucky enough to attend the galaxy's most prestigious military academy. In the shadows of academic excellence, a master of warfare continued his most important mission, understanding the minds that might one day stand against humanity in the dark between the stars. 3 weeks had passed since the fleet tactics exercise, and Marcus found himself in an uncomfortable position. Word of the quiet human's unconventional strategy had spread throughout the academy, earning him invitations to study groups and social gatherings that he had previously avoided. Maintaining his cover of anonymity was becoming increasingly difficult. "Marcus, you must join us for evening tactical discussions," insisted Veltar, an enthusiastic Zenthari whose crystalline exoskeleton reflected rainbow patterns when excited. "Your perspectives on asymmetric warfare would be invaluable to our research group." "I appreciate the invitation," Marcus replied diplomatically, "but I prefer to study alone." "But think of what we could learn from each other," pressed Lisa, the Etherian whose gaseous form pulsed with bioluminescent enthusiasm. "Your species' approach to conflict resolution is fascinatingly unconventional." Marcus nodded politely and continued walking toward his next class, Advanced Xenopsychology. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was attending a class about understanding alien minds while concealing his own background as one of humanity's foremost experts on exactly that subject. Professor Nintheta, a graceful sylvan with bark-like skin and leaves that changed color with her emotions, was discussing the psychological factors that influenced different species' approach to warfare. The key to understanding military conflict between species lies not in their weapons or strategies, but in their fundamental psychological drivers, she explained, her leaves shifting to a deep blue of concentration. For example, the hegemony's aggression stems from their belief system that views conquest as evolutionary necessity. They literally cannot conceive of coexistence without dominance hierarchy. Marcus took careful notes, though he could have taught this class himself. He had spent years studying hegemony psychology, exploiting their predictable behavior patterns during the war. Their need for dominance made them vulnerable to strategies that offered apparent submission while delivering devastating counterattacks. "Can anyone provide another example of psychological factors influencing military doctrine?" Professor Nintheta asked. Thaiska raised her elegant head. "Human warfare psychology is particularly interesting. They seem to have an unusual capacity for what their literature calls fighting dirty when survival is threatened." "Elaborate on that observation," Nintheta encouraged. "Humans appear to abandon conventional military ethics when facing extinction-level threats," Thaiska continued, her scales shifting to thoughtful gold patterns. "They become unpredictably creative in their desperation." Marcus maintained his neutral expression while internally noting how accurate that assessment was. Humanity's greatest military victories had come when they were backed against the wall with no retreat possible. Desperation bred innovation in ways that comfortable tactical planning never could. "And what about honor-based warrior cultures?" Nintheta asked, gesturing toward Krell 9. The massive Vorthan straightened proudly. "My people fight with honor and strength. Victory through deception or trickery is meaningless. True warriors face their enemies directly." Yet the Vorthan military has suffered several significant defeats against more tactically flexible opponents, Nintheta observed gently. "How do you reconcile this with your cultural values?" Krell 9's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Those defeats came because our enemies lacked honor. They used cowardly tactics instead of meeting us in honest combat." Marcus almost spoke up at that. The Vorthan defeats had been thoroughly analyzed in human military schools as examples of how cultural rigidity could be exploited by adaptive opponents, but revealing such knowledge would raise uncomfortable questions about his background. "This brings us to an important principle," Nintheta continued. "Every species' greatest strength in warfare is also their greatest weakness. Vorthan honor makes them formidable but predictable. Hegemony hierarchy gives them organization, but makes them vulnerable to decapitation strikes. Human desperation breeds innovation but can lead to strategic overreach." "What about species that have been peaceful for generations?" asked Zephyr Prime. "How does the lack of military tradition affect their tactical thinking?" "An excellent question," Nintheta replied. "Extended peace often leads to theoretical understanding without practical intuition. Such species can develop sophisticated strategies but struggle with the chaos and uncertainty of actual combat. Marcus thought about his classmates, brilliant minds analyzing warfare from safe academic distance. They understood the theory perfectly, but had never felt the weight of command when lives hung in the balance, never made life-or-death decisions with incomplete information while enemy fire destroyed ships around them. After class, Marcus was approached by an unexpected visitor. Commander HFY, the scarred Saurian instructor, fell into step beside him as he walked toward the library. "Your performance in my tactical exercises has been noted," HFY said without preamble. "You show unusual insight for someone with no apparent military background." Marcus kept his expression neutral. "I read a lot of military history." "Indeed. Your service record indicates you're a civilian logistics coordinator from a human merchant family. Yet you command attention like someone accustomed to being obeyed." The observation was more perceptive than Marcus had expected. HFY was a combat veteran, someone who recognized the subtle signs of command experience. Marcus would need to be more careful around him. "I've always been interested in military affairs," Marcus replied. "Perhaps I missed my calling." HFY's reptilian features showed amusement. "Perhaps. Or perhaps your calling found you in ways not reflected in official records." They walked in comfortable silence for several minutes before HFY spoke again. "There's a special advanced seminar starting next week. Invitation only, focused on contemporary strategic challenges. I think you would find it educational." Contemporary challenges. Rising tensions between the Alliance and several non-member species. Border disputes, resource conflicts, technological proliferation among aggressive civilizations. The kind of problems that might require more than theoretical solutions. Marcus felt a chill of recognition. These were exactly the issues that had prompted his undercover assignment to the Academy. Intelligence reports suggested that several species were forming coalitions that might challenge human space, and understanding potential enemy tactics was crucial for defense planning. "I would be honored to attend," Marcus replied carefully. "Excellent. The first session is tomorrow evening. Bring your unconventional thinking." That evening, Marcus encrypted a secure communication to Admiral Reyes. The special seminar represented both an opportunity and a risk. Access to high-level strategic discussions would provide invaluable intelligence, but increased scrutiny might compromise his cover. "The instructor suspects something," Marcus reported. "He's too experienced not to recognize command presence, even when I'm trying to suppress it." "Can you maintain the deception?" Reyes asked. "For now. But if they start investigating my background more thoroughly, the cover identity won't hold up under serious scrutiny." "We anticipated this possibility. Your extraction plan remains in place if needed." Marcus nodded, though part of him hoped it wouldn't come to that. Despite the challenges, he was learning more about alien tactical thinking than years of traditional intelligence gathering could provide. His classmates had begun opening up around him, sharing their species' military philosophies and strategic assumptions with surprising candor. The next evening, Marcus arrived at the designated classroom to find a much smaller group than usual. Only 8 students had been invited, representing the Academy's top tactical minds from different species. He recognized most of them from various classes, but one figure surprised him. Admiral HFY of the Christine Defense Fleet, a legendary military commander whose strategic brilliance was taught in academies across the galaxy. "Welcome to Advanced Contemporary Strategic Analysis," Admiral HFY announced, her crystalline form refracting light into prismatic patterns. "You have been selected because you demonstrate exceptional tactical insight. What we discuss here is classified at the highest levels." Marcus maintained his calm exterior while internally adjusting his assessment of the situation. This was not a simple academic exercise, but a briefing on actual strategic threats facing the galaxy. His cover as a simple student was about to be severely tested. Our first case study involves the growing alliance between the Corvan Empire and the Nexus Consortium, Thexara continued, activating a holographic display showing star maps with territorial boundaries. Intelligence suggests they are planning coordinated expansion into disputed border regions. Marcus studied the display with growing concern. The regions in question included several systems with significant human populations, colonies that would be difficult to defend if attacked simultaneously from multiple directions. The Corvan military doctrine emphasizes overwhelming force applied rapidly, Thexara explained. They prefer decisive battles that end conflicts quickly. The Nexus Consortium conversely specializes in economic warfare and technological disruption. Combined, they present a formidable challenge. Thais Ka spoke first. Traditional response would be to strengthen border defenses and prepare for siege warfare. But that plays into their strengths. Agreed, said Veltar, crystals flickering with analytical patterns. We need to disrupt their coordination before they can establish unified command structure. Marcus listened as his classmates proposed various strategies, each reflecting their species' tactical preferences. They were good ideas, but they missed the deeper psychological dimensions of the threat. The Corvan Nexus Alliance wasn't just about military capability, it was about testing the galaxy's response to coordinated aggression. Marcus, Admiral Thexara said suddenly, you've been unusually quiet. What's your assessment? All eyes turned to him, and Marcus felt the weight of their expectation. He could provide a safe, academic response that would maintain his cover. Or he could offer the kind of strategic insight that might actually help prevent a war. The alliance isn't really about the border regions, Marcus said finally. Those are secondary objectives. They're testing whether the Galactic Alliance will respond to coordinated threats with coordinated defense. Explain, Thexara commanded. If we respond to their probe with traditional territorial defense, we prove that the Alliance is just a collection of individual species protecting their own interests. That encourages further aggression against isolated targets. Marcus stood and approached the holographic display, his analytical mind fully engaged despite the risks. But if we respond with unified strategy that threatens their core interests simultaneously, we demonstrate that attacking one Alliance member means war with all Alliance members. That's a significant escalation, warned Zephyr Prime. The risk of wider conflict increases exponentially. The risk of wider conflict is already increasing, Marcus replied. The question is whether we manage that escalation or let it manage us. He began outlining a strategic framework that relied on coordinated response across multiple fronts, each designed to exploit specific weaknesses in Corvan and Nexus doctrine while demonstrating Alliance unity. It was the kind of comprehensive analysis that required deep understanding of multiple species' capabilities and limitations. The room fell silent as Marcus finished his presentation. Admiral Thexara studied him with crystalline eyes that seemed to see through his carefully constructed persona. That was a remarkably sophisticated analysis, she said finally, almost as if you've had experience implementing such strategies. Marcus felt the moment of truth approaching. His cover was blown, but perhaps that wasn't entirely a bad thing. The intelligence he was gathering here might be too valuable to lose by maintaining a deception that was becoming unsustainable anyway. I've studied human military history extensively, he replied, choosing his words carefully. My species has had to develop these kinds of strategies out of necessity. Indeed, Thexara mused. And what does human military history teach about the current situation? Marcus met her gaze directly. That underestimating your opponents is dangerous, but underestimating your allies can be fatal. After the seminar ended, Marcus walked through the Academy's corridors with the knowledge that his situation had fundamentally changed. His classmates looked at him differently now, seeing not a quiet student, but someone with genuine strategic insight. The questions would come soon, and his cover story would crumble under serious investigation. But perhaps that was inevitable. The galaxy was moving toward conflicts that would require every advantage humanity could muster, and the intelligence he was gathering might prove crucial for survival. His mission was evolving from passive observation to active engagement with the strategic challenges facing both humanity and the galaxy as a whole. As he reached his quarters, Marcus found a message waiting on his personal terminal. The sender was Admiral Thexara, and the contents were both surprising and ominous. "Mr. A. Chen," the message read, "I believe we should have a private conversation about your background and your real reasons for being at this academy. My office, tomorrow morning. Come prepared to be honest." Marcus stared at the screen, knowing that his quiet mission in the shadows was about to become something much more complicated and dangerous. The game had changed, and he would have to adapt quickly to maintain both his mission and his cover. Outside his window, the stars of the Kepler system glittered against the cosmic dark, each one representing worlds and civilizations that might soon be at war. In the silence of his quarters, a retired admiral prepared for the most important negotiation of his career, one that might determine whether humanity faced the coming darkness alone or with allies who understood the true cost of survival. Marcus stood before Admiral Thexara's office door, knowing that everything would change once he crossed this threshold. The crystalline nameplate reflected the corridor lights in prismatic patterns, like a kaleidoscope of possibilities and consequences. He had spent 43 years in military service, but this moment felt more dangerous than any battle he had fought. The door slid open before he could announce himself. Admiral Thexara sat behind a desk made from what appeared to be a single piece of polished asteroid mineral, its surface etched with star charts and tactical diagrams. Her crystalline form caught the room's light and scattered it into complex patterns across the walls. "Admiral Marcus Chen," she said without preamble. "Hero of New Thermopylae, architect of the Hegemony War defensive strategies, and according to official records, retired 3 months ago to pursue academic interests." Marcus maintained his composure despite the shock of hearing his real name and rank spoken aloud. "I'm not sure what you mean, Admiral." "Please, sit." Thexara gestured to a chair that adjusted itself automatically to human proportions. "Your operational security was excellent, but not perfect. Certain patterns in your tactical thinking, combined with your apparent age and the timing of your arrival, created a profile that matched known intelligence about recent human command structure changes." Marcus took the offered seat, his mind racing through options and contingencies. "How long have you known?" "I suspected from the first advanced seminar your strategic analysis was too sophisticated for a student. Too comprehensive for someone without command experience. But I confirmed it yesterday when I accessed classified Alliance intelligence databases." "Are you going to expose me?" Thexara's crystalline features shifted in what Marcus had learned to recognize as amusement. "Expose you to whom? The Academy administration who approved your enrollment? The Alliance command structure that authorized your presence here? Or perhaps the Christine Defense Council that specifically requested human strategic consultation?" Marcus blinked in surprise. "Requested? Admiral Chen, did you really think your cover identity was created without our knowledge? The Galactic Alliance has been aware of your mission from the beginning. We wanted you here." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. His carefully planned undercover operation had been orchestrated by the very people he was supposed to be observing. "Why?" "Because war is coming," Thexara said simply. "The Corvin Nexus Alliance is only the beginning. Intelligence suggests at least 6 species are forming coalitions against Alliance members. We need every advantage we can obtain, and humanity's tactical innovations may be crucial for survival." She activated a holographic display that filled the office with 3-dimensional star maps marked with territorial boundaries, fleet positions, and tactical assessments. What I'm about to show you is classified beyond your current clearance level, but circumstances require exceptional measures. Marcus studied the display, his experienced eye immediately recognizing the scope of the threat. The anti-alliance coalitions weren't random groupings of aggressive species, but carefully coordinated alliances designed to exploit specific weaknesses in the current galactic balance of power. The hegemony war convinced many species that humanity represents an existential threat to galactic stability, Thexara explained. Your victory over forces that outnumbered you 50-1 terrified civilizations that had never faced such tactical adaptability. So they're uniting against us, Marcus concluded. Against the Alliance, but yes, humanity is seen as the primary strategic threat. The question is whether we can forge defenses strong enough to deter aggression or flexible enough to survive it. Marcus spent the next 2 hours reviewing intelligence reports that painted a disturbing picture of galactic politics. Species that had maintained neutrality for centuries were choosing sides based on fear of human military capabilities. The very innovations that had saved humanity during the hegemony war were now driving potential allies toward enemies. There's something else, Thexara said as the briefing concluded. Your student persona has provided unexpected benefits. Several of your classmates have begun proposing joint tactical doctrines that combine human unconventional warfare with their species' traditional strengths. You want me to continue the deception? I want you to drop it entirely. Your classmates need to understand who you really are and what your experience brings to Alliance defense planning. But more importantly, they need to see you as a partner rather than a threat. Marcus considered the implications. Revealing his identity would fundamentally change his relationships with the students who had begun treating him as an equal. They would see him as Marcus Chen, the legendary admiral, not Marcus, the quiet human student who helped with tactical problems. What exactly are you proposing? An expanded role. Continue your studies, but also serve as a strategic advisor to the Academy's advanced programs. Help us develop the kind of integrated tactical doctrines that might keep this galaxy from tearing itself apart. That afternoon, Marcus found himself standing before the same Advanced Contemporary Strategic Analysis seminar, but this time, Admiral Thexara introduced him properly. The students' reactions ranged from shock to excitement to barely concealed intimidation. Admiral Chen has agreed to share his operational experience with contemporary tactical challenges, Thexara announced. His insights into asymmetric warfare and multi-species coordination will be invaluable as we address current threats. Thaiska's scales had shifted to a deep purple of embarrassment. You've been listening to us analyze battles you actually fought. And learning from your perspectives, Marcus replied honestly. Academic analysis often reveals patterns that combat participants miss. You've helped me understand my own experiences better. But we must have sounded foolishly naive, Veltar said, his crystalline form dimming with shame. You sounded like brilliant young minds approaching complex problems with fresh perspectives, Marcus corrected. That's exactly what the galaxy needs right now. He spent the next hour sharing the real story behind several battles they had studied, explaining the human decision-making processes that had led to unconventional victories. But more importantly, he listened to their questions and incorporated their insights into his own understanding of contemporary threats. The psychological factors you identified about human desperation-driven innovation were completely accurate, Marcus told Thaiska. But I never considered how that might appear to species that value stability and predictability. Your analysis helps me understand why our tactics terrify potential allies. So how do we bridge that gap? Asked Krell 9, his mandibles clicking with genuine curiosity rather than dismissal. By developing hybrid approaches that combine human adaptability with other species' strengths, Marcus suggested. Vorthan honor provides moral authority that human pragmatism lacks. Pristine analytical precision compensates for human improvisation. Naga psychological insight adds depth to human tactical flexibility. Over the following weeks, Marcus found his role evolving beyond anything he had imagined when accepting this assignment. He was no longer gathering intelligence on alien tactical thinking, but actively participating in the development of new strategic doctrines that could defend the galaxy against coordinated aggression. The students embraced their expanded role with enthusiasm that reminded Marcus why he had chosen military service in the first place. They weren't just studying warfare, they were preparing to prevent it through the development of defenses so effective that aggression would become prohibitively expensive. Human tactical doctrine emphasizes turning disadvantages into advantages, Marcus explained during one session. But what if we could eliminate the disadvantages entirely through species cooperation? He outlined scenarios where Vorthan honor guards provided unwavering defensive positions, while human forces conducted infiltration and sabotage operations. Pristine analytical capabilities could coordinate complex multi-species operations, while Naga psychological warfare undermined enemy morale. Etherian technology could provide logistical support, while human improvisation adapted to changing battlefield conditions. The key is not just combining our capabilities, but creating something entirely new, Marcus continued. A tactical approach that no single species could develop alone. Zephyr Prime's optical sensors flickered with rapid calculations. Such integration would require unprecedented levels of interspecies trust and communication, which is exactly what our enemies don't expect, Theaska observed, her scales shifting to excited gold patterns. They're preparing to fight alliance species as individual opponents, not as a truly unified force. But would it work in practice? Krell 9 asked skeptically. Combat creates chaos that destroys even the best-planned coordination. Marcus smiled grimly. That's where human experience becomes valuable. We specialize in fighting in chaos, turning uncertainty into an advantage rather than a weakness. 3 months later, the first integrated tactical exercise took place in the Academy's advanced simulation systems. Marcus watched as his former classmates, now recognized as some of the galaxy's most promising strategic minds, commanded forces that represented true interspecies cooperation. The results exceeded even his optimistic projections. Theaska's Naga forces provided psychological intelligence that allowed Krell 9's Vorthan units to position themselves perfectly for maximum honor-based impact. Veltar's pristine analytical capabilities coordinated Zephyr Prime's AI-enhanced logistics, while Marcus provided overall strategic direction that adapted constantly to changing conditions. When Admiral Thexara reviewed the exercise results, her crystalline features reflected patterns of deep satisfaction. Enemy forces were defeated so decisively that the simulation had to be recalibrated. More importantly, casualty rates were 60% lower than traditional single-species tactics would have achieved. Marcus nodded, but his attention was focused on the broader implications. This isn't just about military effectiveness. The level of trust and cooperation required for these tactics creates political bonds that are difficult to break. Meaning, species that can fight together this effectively are much less likely to fight against each other. We're not just developing military doctrine, we're building the foundation for lasting galactic stability. 6 months after his identity was revealed, Marcus received a secure communication from Admiral Reyes. The message was brief, but carried enormous implications. Corvin Nexus Alliance has withdrawn their expansion plans. Intelligence suggests they were intimidated by reports of new Alliance tactical capabilities. Mission successful. Return when ready. Marcus stared at the message, knowing that his official assignment was complete, but feeling reluctant to leave. The Academy had become more than an intelligence-gathering operation. it had become the birthplace of a new approach to galactic cooperation that might prevent the wars his generation had fought from ever happening again. "You're not returning to Earth," Admiral Thexara observed, reading his expression with the insight that crystalline perception provided. "How did you know?" "Because this work isn't finished. The tactical doctrines we've developed need to be tested, refined, and taught to military academies across Alliance space. That requires someone with both command experience and teaching ability." Marcus looked around the academy that had become his second home, thinking about the students who had become colleagues and the mission that had evolved into something much larger than intelligence gathering. "Professor Chen has a certain ring to it," Thexara continued, with crystalline amusement. Outside the academy windows, the stars of the Kepler system continued their ancient dance, but the galaxy they illuminated had changed. Where once there had been isolated species preparing for individual conflicts, there was now the foundation of something unprecedented. True galactic cooperation based on mutual strength rather than mutual fear. Marcus Chen, retired admiral, undercover agent, and accidentally discovered teacher, looked at the future he had helped create and realized that his most important battles had been fought not with weapons, but with ideas that could unite a galaxy against the darkness between the stars. The silent human had found his voice at last, and the galaxy would never be the same.